Good day, everyone. My name is Hannah Bella B. Lopez, and I'm from the Group 2. And our topic is all about the literature as a tool for social change.
My topic is all about a literary work contributing to social change.
We have here the learning objectives. At the end of this lesson, students will be able to explain how Uncle Tom's Cabin influenced public opinion against slavery, identify key themes highlighting immorality of slavery and Christian values, describe the novel's role in advancing the abolitionist movement, analyze how the story humanized enslaved people and inspire empathy, recognize the novel's impact on American society and its lead up to Civil War. A specific literary work contributing to social change is a written piece, such as novel, poem, or play, that addresses social issues, challenges injustices, or promotes new ways of thinking, thereby inspiring readers and societies to rethink norms and motivate activism or reform. Uncle Tom's Cabin or Life Among the Lowly is an anti-slavery novel by American author Harriet Beecher Stowe. Published into two volumes in 1852, the novel had a profound effect on attitudes towards African Americans and slavery in the U.S., and is said to have helped lay the groundwork for the American Civil War. In the United States, Uncle Tom's Cabin was the best-selling novel and the second best-selling book of the 19th century, following the Bible. It is credited with helping fuel the abolitionist cause in the 1850s. The influence attributed the book was so great that a likely apocryphal story across the Abraham Lincoln meeting Stowe at the start of the Civil War and declaring, "So this is the title lady who started this great war." The book and the plays it inspired helped popularize number of negative stereotypes about black people, including that of the namesake of character Uncle Tom. The term came to be associated with an excessively subservient person. These later associated with Uncle Tom's Cabin have to an extent overshadowed the historical effects of the book as a vital anti-slavery tool. Nonetheless, the novel remains a landmark in protest literature, with later books such as The Jungle by Upton Sinclair and Silent Spring by Rachel Carson owing a large depth to it. While the story was being serialized, the publisher John P. Jewett contracted with Stowe to turn the Uncle Tom's Cabin into a book, convinced the book would be popular. Jewett made the unusual decision for the time to have six full-page illustrations by Hamlet Billings to engrave for the first printing. Published in book form in March 20, 1852. The novel sold 3,000 copies on that date alone, and soon sold out its complete printout. In the first year after it was published, 300,000 copies of the book were sold in the United States. Eight printing presses, running instantly, could barely keep up with the demand. Stowe, a Connecticut-born teacher at the Hartford Female Seminary, was part of the religious Beecher family and an active abolitionist. She wrote the sentimental novel to dissipate the reality of slavery while also asserting that Christian love could overcome slavery. The novel focuses on the character of Uncle Tom, a long-suffering black slave around whom the story of the other characters revolve. Stowe was partly inspired to create Uncle Tom's Cabin by the slave narrative The Life of Josiah Henson, formerly a slave, now an inhabitant of Canada. As narrated by himself in 1849, Henson, a formerly enslaved black man, had lived and worked on a 3,700 acre or 15 kilometers plantation in North Bethesda, Maryland, owned by Isaac Riley. Henson escaped slavery in 1830 by fleeing to the province of Upper Canada, now in Ontario, where they helped other fugitive slaves settle and become self-sufficient. Harriet Beecher Stowe was a woman from Connecticut who worked as a teacher at the Hartford Female Seminary. She came from the Beecher family, which was very religious and known for speaking out on social issues. Stowe was strongly against slavery. She wrote a powerful book to show people the harsh truth about how enslaved people were treated. At the same time, she wanted to show that Christian kindness and love could help fight and end slavery. Her story is centered on a man named Uncle Tom, a gentle and patient black slave. The book follows his life and shows that lives of many other characters connect to him. Through their stories, Stowe tried to make readers feel sympathy for enslaved people and support the movement to end slavery. By mid-1853, sales of the book dramatically decreased, and Jewett went out of the business during the Panic of 1857. In June 1860, the Wright published Uncle Tom's Cabin passed through the Boston firm Ticknor and Fields, which put the book back in print in November 1862. After that demand began to yet again increase, Houghton Mifflin Company acquired the rights from Ticknor in 1878. In 1879, a new edition of Uncle Tom's Cabin was released, repackaging the novel as an American classic through the 1880s. Until its copyright expired, the book served as a mainstay and reliable source of income for Houghton Mifflin. By the end of the 19th century, the novel was widely available in a large number of editions, and in the United States, it became the second best-selling book of the century after the Bible. Uncle Tom's Cabin sold equally well in Britain. The first London edition appeared in May 1852 and sold 200,000 copies. In a few years, over 1.5 million copies of the book were in the circulation in Britain, although most of these were infringing copies. Similar situation occurred in the United States. By 1857, the novel had been translated into 20 languages. Translator Lin Shu published the first Chinese translation in 1901, making it the first American novel translated into that language. Uncle Tom, the title character, was initially seen as a noble, long-suffering Christian slave. In more recent years, his name has become an epithet directed towards African Americans who are accused of selling out to whites. Stowe intended Tom to be a noble hero and a praiseworthy person. Throughout the book, far from allowing himself to be exploited, Tom stood up for his beliefs and refused to betray his friends and family. Eliza is a slave who served as a personal maid to Miss Shelby. She escaped to the north with her 5-year-old son, Harry, after he sold to Mr. Haley, her husband. George eventually finds Eliza and Harry in Ohio and immigrates with them to Canada, then France, and finally Liberia. The character Eliza was inspired by an account given at Lane Theological Seminary in Cincinnati by John Rankin to Stowe husbands in Calvin. A professor at the school, according to Rankin, in February 1838, a young slave woman, Eliza Harris, had escaped across the frozen Ohio River to the town of Ripley with her child in her arms and stayed at his house on her way farther north. Evangeline, or Eva St. Clair, is the daughter of Augustine St. Clair. Eva enters the narrative when Uncle Tom is traveling via steamship to New Orleans to be sold, and he rescues the 5 or 6-year-old girl from drowning. Eva begs her father to buy Tom, and he becomes the head of coachman to the St. Clair's house. He spends most of his time with the angelic Eva. Eva often talks about love and forgiveness, convincing the door slave girl Topsy that she deserves love. She even touches the heart of her aunt Ophelia. Eventually, Eva falls terminally ill. Before dying, she gives a lock of her hair to each of the slaves, telling them they must become Christians so that they see each other in heaven. On her deathbed, she convinced her father to free Tom, but because of circumstances, the promise never materialized. The book has also been seen as an attempt to redefine masculinity as a necessary step toward the abolition of slavery. In this view, abolitionists had begun to resist the vision of aggressive and dominant men that conquest the colonization of the early 19th century had fostered. To change the notion of manhood so that men could oppose slavery without jeopardizing their self-image or understanding in society, some abolitionists drew on principles of women's suffrage and Christianity as well as pacifism and praised men for cooperation, compassion, and civic spirit. Others within the abolitionist movement argued for the conventional, aggressive masculine action. All the men in Stowe's novel are a representation of either one kind man or the other. So now let's move on to the 20th century and modern criticism. In the 20th century, a number of writers attacked the Uncle Tom's Cabin not only for the stereotypes the novel had created about African Americans but also because of the utter disdain of the community character by the black community. These writers include Richard Wright with his collection Uncle Tom's Children in 1938 and Chester Himes with his 1943 short story titled Heaven Has Changed. Ralph Ellison has also critiqued the book with his 1952 novel The Invisible Man, with Ellison figuratively killing Uncle Tom in the opening chapter. We have here the literary significance. Generally recognized as the first best-selling novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin greatly influenced development of not only American literature but also protest literature in general. Later books that owe a large debt to Uncle Tom's Cabin include The Jungle by Upton Sinclair and Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. And now, let's talk about the publication of Uncle Tom's Cabin. Uncle Tom's Cabin first appeared as a 40-week serial in the National Era, an abolitionist periodical starting with the June 5, 1851 issue. It was originally intended as a shorter narrative that would run for only a few weeks. Stowe expanded the story significantly, however, it was instantly popular, such that protests were sent to the Era office when she missed an issue. The final installment was released in the April 1, 1852 issue of Era. Stowe arranged for the story copyright to be registered with the United States District Court for the District of Maine. She renewed her copyright in 1879 and the work entered the public domain on May 12, 1893. We have here the literary themes and theories, but first we will talk about the major themes. Uncle Tom's Cabin is dominated by a single theme, the evil and immorality of slavery, while Stowe weaves other sub-themes throughout her texts, such as the moral authority of motherhood and the power of Christian love. She emphasizes the connections between this and the horrors of slavery. Stowe sometimes changed the story's voice so she could give a homily on the destructive nature of slavery, such as when a white woman on the steamboat carrying Tom further south state, the most dreadful part of slavery, to my mind, is its outrages of feelings and affections, the separating of families, for example. One way Stowe showed the evil of slavery was how this particular institution forcibly separated families from each other. Some of the subthemes presented in the novel is temperance. Stowe made it somewhat subtle. In some cases, she wove it in events that would also support the dominant theme. One example of this event is when Augustine St. Clair is killed. He attempted to stop a brawl between the two inebriated men in a cafe and was stabbed. Another example is the death of Prue, who was whipped to death for being drunk on a consistent basis. However, her reasons for doing is due to the loss of her baby. In the opening of the novel, the fates of Eliza and her son are being discussed between slave owners over wine. Considering that Stowe intended this to be a sub-theme, this scene could foreshadow future events that put alcohol in a bad light. Because Stowe saw motherhood as the ethical and structural model for all of the American life, and also believed that only women had moral authority to save the United States from the demon of slavery. Another major theme of Uncle Tom's Cabin is the moral power of necessity of women, through characters like Eliza, who escaped from slavery to save her young son, and eventually reunites with her entire family, or Eva, who is seen the ideal Christian. Stowe shows how she believed women could save those around them from even the worst injustice. Through later critics have noted that Stowe female characters are often domestic cliches instead of realistic women. Stowe novel reaffirmed the importance of women's influence and helped pave the way of the women's rights movement in the following decades. Stowe's puritanical religious beliefs show up in the novel's final, overarching theme, the exploration of the nature of Christian love, and how she feels Christian theology is fundamentally incompatible with slavery. This theme is most evident with Tom urges St. Clair to look away to Jesus. After the death of St. Clair's beloved daughter Eva, after Tom dies, Dirge Selby eulogized Tom by saying what a thing it is to be a Christian. Because Christian themes play such a large role in Uncle Tom's Cabin, and because of Stowe's frequent use of direct authorial interjections on our religion and faith, the novel often takes the form of a sermon. And next is the literary theories. So, over the years, scholars have postulated a number of theories about what Stowe was trying to say with the novel, aside from the major theme of condemning slavery. For example, as an ardent Christian and active abolitionist, Stowe placed many of her religious beliefs into the novel. Some scholars have stated that Stowe saw her novel as offering a solution to the moral and political dilemma that troubled many slavery opponents, whether engaging in prohibitive behavior was justified in opposing evil. Was the use of violence to oppose the violence of slavery and the breaking of pro slavery laws morally defensible? Which of Stowe's characters should be emulated? The passive of Uncle Tom or the defense of George Harris? Stowe's solutions was similar to Ralph Waldo Emerson's, God's will would be followed if each person sincerely examined his principle and acted on them. Scholars have also seen the novel as expressing the values and ideas of the free will movement. In this view, the character of George Harris embodies the principles of free labor, and the complex character of Ophelia represents those Northerners who condoned compromise with slavery. In contrast to Ophelia is Dinah, who operates on passion. During the course of the novel, Ophelia is transformed. Just as the Republican Party, 3 years later, proclaimed that the North must transform itself and stand up for its anti slavery principles. Feminist theory can also be seen at the play in Stowe's book with the novel as a critique of the patriarchal nature of slavery. For Stowe, blood relations rather than paternalistic relations between master and slave form the basis of families. Moreover, Stowe viewed national solidarity as an extension of person's family, thus feelings of nationality stem from possessing a shared race. Consequently, she advocated African colonization for freed slaves and not amalgamation into American society. So, in conclusion, Uncle Tom's Cabin is a powerful book that shows the cruelty and injustice of slavery. It tells the story of Uncle Tom, a kind and faithful slave, and others who suffer but keep hope and faith. The novel made many people realize that slavery is wrong and helped change their minds. It also shows the importance of love, family, and forgiveness. The book played a big role in inspiring people to fight for the freedom and rights of the enslaved people.
Once again, this is Hannah Bella B. Lopez. Thank you for listening.